members, corporate partners, colleagues, and friends. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, where you are. I am extremely proud to open this session of IOE's General Council, marking our centenary. Let me start by recognizing the presence in today's event of a number of IOE presidents. I notably recognize Mr. Hedi Jilani from Tunisia, former IOE president from 97 to 99. Professor Wiseman Nulu from South Africa, former IOE president from 2008 to 2011. And Mr. Daniel Funes de Rioja, past IOE president from 2014 to 2017. I congratulate again Daniel for his title of honorary IOE president. I also note that we are also joined by a number of former IOE secretary generals, Mr. Antonio Peñalosa, Mr. Brent Wilton, Mrs. Linda Kromyoung, and former IOE staff. You all honor us for your presence. Dear friends, 2020 was meant to be a year of celebration, reflection, and new direction for IOE. Instead, we are working intensively to assist our members with meeting the challenges from the worst health and economic crisis in living memory. As I have written in the introduction of IOE's soon-to-be-published history book, throughout the disruption, one constant and stable pillar has been how we base each other action in our COVID-19 response on the values that have guided our work for over 100 years. From the outset and spanning 2 world wars, a Cold War, and the extraordinary rise of a connected and global economy, IOE's values have remained a commitment to dialogue, solidarity between employers, and an unwavering support of and investment in a free market economy and multilateral international system that works for all. The 50 million companies that are part of the IOE network today and the millions of other enterprises that came before us have shown a steadfast dedication to these values. And it is these values that drive our effort today in these challenging times. Dear members, dear friends, together, over the past 100 years, we have been successfully promoted business throughout the international community, whether it be the United Nations, the International Labour Organization, and the G20, along with other institutions. And we remain focused on promoting with you, our members, the relevance of multilateralism as one of the most effective ways to expand business opportunities and improve people's lives. I would like to conclude these very brief remarks, as we have a full program ahead of us, by announcing the launch of IOE's new history book and dedicated web pages to our history. You will see how, despite massive historical, political headwinds and social upheaval, we, employers, remain a united force, navigating the changes and staying focused on promoting the voice of business worldwide. Enjoy the celebration. Back to the studio, back to you, Roberto.
Welcome from this side, welcome from Geneva. I am pleased also to introduce now the Director General of the United Nations Office in Geneva, Mrs. Tatiana Valovaya. For much of our 100 history, we have been working closely with the UN family. We started with the ILO. We are a strong partner of the ILO, but we have many relationships with different UN agencies and bodies. Our decades of partnership with the UN has led to many important achievements. Madam Director General, thank you very much for the gesture of joining us. Thank you very much for taking part in our Centenary General Council. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it is a great pleasure to be with you today for the opening of the 2020 General Council of the International Organization of Employers. From the outset, I wish to congratulate the IOE on its centenary. The IOE was among the first business organizations to engage directly with the multilateral system and has been an important pillar of the International Labour Organization ever since. The IOE 100-year-long history reflects the strong resilience of multilateral and public-private cooperation. The organization has made significant contributions to global policy making for economic and social progress, job creation, as well as to fostering a mutually beneficial business environment. Decent work, thriving businesses, and a fair society that benefits all can only be achieved when governments, organizations, and policymakers work in close collaboration with business leaders to implement effective policies and practical solutions. This centenary offers an opportunity to celebrate the IOE's important achievements and to reflect on the future of work. We need a clear vision and closer cooperation between businesses, governments, and the UN system, particularly in the context of our efforts to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome the IOE's decision to devote this centenary event to multilateralism. It is my strong belief that the magnitude of global challenges indeed call for renewed multilateral solutions. A multilateralism that can take on the challenges that we face today must be networked and inclusive, drawing on different international institutions and organizations, civil society, academia, and the private sector. At a time when multilateralism is under severe strain, the role and efforts of the IOE remain as relevant as ever. Since the start of the pandemic, UN Secretary General Guterres has urged governments, international organizations, and the private sector, and many more stakeholders to channel all actions to build back better. Working jointly on global challenges and achieving a more equal and sustainable future for all must be our utmost priority. Private enterprises play a crucial role as agents of the economy and drivers of development. But the role of businesses goes beyond just providing goods and services. Businesses must contribute through resources, partnerships, and innovation, but also through a paradigm shift in the sector. What we need is business as unusual, businesses that take responsibility for today and tomorrow, that combat corruption, strengthens the circular economy, and create fair, gender-sensitive, and green jobs. We need a private sector that actively addresses inequalities and vulnerabilities, that has a positive social and environmental footprint, and works in partnership with communities, civil society, and young people. It is encouraging to see already many positive examples of businesses embracing the SDGs, multilateralism, partnerships, and international cooperation. In the past months, we have seen unprecedented alliances and achievements. Just think about all the transnational partnerships for vaccine development, treatment, and strengthening of healthcare. Digitization in record speed in many sectors. Businesses working jointly on technologies for the common good, and partnerships within and among communities to support people in need. Everywhere, we see new thinking, innovation, and cross-sectoral collaboration. The IOE, working hand in hand with workers and government representatives, can make a significant contribution in managing these transformations changes for the better. The IOE's efforts to create a conducive environment for decent work, investments, and sustainability are of particular importance. As United Nations Secretary General Guterres underscored, the UN guiding principles on business and human rights, the UN Global Compact, the ILO Tripartite Declaration of Principles concerning multinational enterprises and social policy are instrumental platforms to promote responsible business conduct. The world needs innovation and creativity. It also requires investment in businesses, jobs, and people. We need to work together to build a better future, to protect workers and small businesses, to promote gender equality and create opportunities for youth. We need to share development gains more equitably to ensure that all people have an opportunity to fulfill their potential. To create together this better future, we need a global multilateral system that is more inclusive and offers practical responses to all common challenges. The International Organization of Employers and the private sector have a real capacity to make a meaningful difference and ensure a more effective multilateralism. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in these deeply challenging times, I encourage you to continue working in the direction of a fairer, greener, and more sustainable labor world. Together, we can make these policy choices that sustain decent work. Together, we can advance the cause of multilateralism for social justice and a fair globalization. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Valovaya. You refer to innovation, you refer to creativeness, you refer to our engagement with multilateralism. I also want to thank not just you also, but all the UN family and also the Secretary General of the UN who joined us the 2nd of September in one of our centenary events. It's really much appreciated. We now have some testimonies of business leaders among our community who wanted to convey some celebration messages. And I also want to also thank all of you who are congratulating us through the chat function of the Zoom to congratulate us. These voices are not necessarily the voices that we normally use in our traditional, classical general councils. These are leaders of our organizations who have been supporting our work recently. We attach also great importance to the gender aspect of these contributions. First, I want to introduce Mrs. Emma Marsegaglia, former president of Coffee Industria, former president of Business Europe, but also the designated chair of the B20 Italy next year, and the chairman and CEO of Marsegaglia Holding Group. I would like now to have a message. Let's listen to the message of Madame Marsegaglia.
Dear Errol, dear Vice Presidents, members of the General Council and of the Board, fellow entrepreneurs, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a great pleasure joining you in such an important occasion. Warmest congratulations, IOE, on your centenary. I'm honored to represent the Italian business community that stands among the founders of IOE in 1920 to celebrate with you this outstanding milestone. The long history of IOE is plenty of important achievements. This organization has set the guiding principles and common values that have imprinted the daily life of thousands of companies worldwide. We all are so grateful for that and for the IOE's strong commitment in creating a sustainable economic environment, in promoting and defending free entrepreneurship, in raising awareness on the importance of a business-friendly environment, in advocating the social role of business vis-à-vis governments, international and multilateral institutions and organizations. And most of all, for accomplishing this mission in so highly critical times. We are experiencing an unprecedented crisis that urges all of us, private and public sector, in advanced, developing and less developed economies, to join forces and act together to face epochal challenges. We entrepreneurs have taken up this task on behalf of our workers, of our societies, and of the future generation. We feel the great responsibility to bring the world economy on a sustainable growth path. But there is more to do. Ensuring preparedness, strengthening resilience, promoting and enforcing sustainability and inclusiveness at all levels are our ever goals. But I fear that will not be enough any longer if all these objectives are not be achieved altogether with a new vision in mind and through a common implementation time frame. This is what we are looking for. And this is why the global business community must stand firm and credible before the widespread crisis of the multilateral governance bodies. The COVID-19 pandemic has revealed how this governance is fragile and fragmented, substantially unable to face the challenges we are confronted with. We, of course, reject the idea that we should return to where we were before. We rather believe that there is a brighter future to be shaped, a future based on real inclusiveness, true sharing, and concrete change enacting decisions. I have the honor to chair the B20 Italy. We are about to start, and our commitment is to convey activable and impactful recommendations for sustainable growth and inclusion in a regenerated global governance ecosystem. IOE will be a key partner along this process, and we are looking forward to working with you all. Our B20 will ensure continuity and consistency with previous B20 editions, while innovating the priority clusters to deal with the disruptive effects of the crisis. Ensuring inclusive and sustainable management of global emergencies will be our polar star, and it will be my personal care that the B20 voice is heard by the G20 Italian presidency and in the most authoritative international fora. As past president of Confindustria and as past president of Business Europe, I'm deeply convinced that no effort can ultimately deliver without the full commitment of the business organization. Therefore, my hope is that I will be supported by the extraordinary force of IOE. Thanks for the attention and happy Centenary once again.
Thank you very much to Emma for this encouraging measure, also for this willingness also to commit further with IOE in the coming president of the B20. Let me also introduce two speakers. One is Maria Isabel León de Céspedes. She is the president of CONFIEP, one of the most active and engaged employers organizations in Latin America with IOE. And also Mrs. Michelle Parmelet, the vice chair of USAIB, our North American USA member, and also deputy CEO of Deloitte. Please go ahead with the message.
Soy María Isabel León, presidenta de CONFIEP, gremio empresarial cúpula del Perú, que tiene por misión promover y velar por el desarrollo de la actividad empresarial orientada al bienestar de los ciudadanos Y también, al igual que el resto de gremios representados en la Organización Internacional de Empleadores, promovemos una economía social de mercado y el respeto al Estado de Derecho. Muchas gracias por esta oportunidad para dirigirme a ustedes con ocasión de la celebración del Consejo General de la Organización Internacional de Empleadores. En CONFIEP estamos complacidos por el trabajo que viene desarrollando la OIE, en cuya organización ya se registran más de 100 años y más de 150 organizaciones nacionales independientes que conglomeran a más de 50 millones de empresas, la que la convierte en la voz mundial del sector privado. Creemos ahora más que nunca en esa frase de la unión hace la fuerza, y en ese caso encaja perfectamente con este referente que es la OIE, que hace oír la voz de los empleadores en foros importantes como la OIT, Naciones Unidas, G20, G7, Unión Europea, entre otros, en donde defiende nuestra posición y a la vez hace un trabajo propositivo para establecer políticas internacionales que promuevan el desarrollo empresarial. Ayuda además a coordinar la representación empresarial en la región con el mundo, con la OIT y con otros organismos. Nexos bisagra para la integración empresarial a nivel global. Compartimos los compromisos establecidos por la OIE en su manifiesto del Centenario, en donde se obligan a seguir con el diálogo constructivo con sindicatos y gobiernos para seguir manteniendo un entorno positivo basado en la economía de mercado. El intercambio de conocimientos, la consecución del empoderamiento e igualdad de género, la aplicación de los principios rectores de las Naciones Unidas sobre empresas y derechos humanos, reducción de obstáculos en los mercados globales hacia empresas que se encuentran en la economía de desarrollo. Al encontrarnos en una etapa aún incierta por esta pandemia, es necesario el apoyo de todos los sectores de la sociedad, tanto del sector público como privado, en donde las organizaciones empresariales son elementos claves para lograr sinergias y enfocar esfuerzos para poder combatir todas las dificultades que se avecinan. Parte de esos esfuerzos es no perder de vista que el desarrollo y promoción de la actividad privada sirve para la creación y sostenimiento de una sociedad donde sus individuos puedan encontrar bienestar, originando un círculo virtuoso en donde luego el empresariado pueda seguir devolviendo, no solamente utilidades, sino bienestar para el país. Muchas gracias.
To IOE members around the world. It is my privilege to be here today to celebrate IOE's centenary. The USCIB and IOE share an extraordinary history, and the video we have just seen is a great reminder of that history, of the deep connection between the United States and the principles and values of the IOE. USCIB has been a member of the IOE for nearly 75 years. We joined in 1946, just as the world was beginning to rebuild after World War II. And today we find ourselves rebuilding yet again. Only this time, it's not a result of war. This time, it is a global pandemic causing the disruption, and at a scale never before seen in our lifetimes. Together, the USCIB and IOE have been working to navigate the crisis, to help carve a path forward for the business community. It hasn't been easy. There's no playbook for this, but my colleagues and I at USCIB have been incredibly encouraged by the solidarity within the IOE's global network, by the unity of our business voice, and by the way we partner in good times and bad. It's been said that the worst of times bring out the best in people, and that is certainly what I have witnessed throughout these difficult months. There is an understanding between IOE members that we need to do more than find a way back to business as usual. Together, we need to build business back better. And this is our time to do it. Yes, COVID-19 has taken a toll on our global economy, and many of us are seeing that firsthand in our respective countries. But we're also seeing potential to move faster on Agenda 2030 ambitions and other international goals. Sadly, many businesses of all sizes have been forced to close, and it's likely that all of us here have lost members within our employer organizations as a result. But on the other hand, we've seen businesses rally in unexpected ways. Consider how seamlessly so many businesses pivoted to virtual work, some almost overnight, and how quickly many intensified their digitization initiatives to meet changing demand from customers. This is the kind of resilience we have seen in the wake of the first wave. And in many places, the economy has begun to rebound. So, As we meet in the shadow of the dreaded second wave, it is up to us to push our employer organizations to work even harder, to fight for the small business owner overwhelmed by financial turmoil and worried about the well-being of their people, and to protect and promote business continuity wherever we can, and to ensure businesses' concerns are heard and understood throughout the international community. So let me finish by congratulating the IOE again on its centenary and on a job well done. Thank you to the IOE leaders of the past for defending the rights of employers with unwavering resolve in the ILO and UN system. Thank you to the current IOE team for raising the voice of business in these challenging times. And most of all, thank you, fellow IOE members. At USCIB, we are proud to be on this journey with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Maria Isabel Leon. I think that both of you refer to the independence of employers' organizations, the representativeness, and also Michelle referred to values which I share with all of you. At the end of the day, that's what matters, and that's what will be helpful also to overcome the pandemic and the economic and social consequences of this pandemic as referred by Michelle. Let me just now go to another important live speaker, which is Madame Mrs. Emery Toracinta, Madame la Présidente du Conseil de Genève. Madame la Présidente, nous sommes très honorés de vous avoir parmi nous aujourd'hui. L'OIE s'est implanté à Genève depuis les années 60. Et votre accueil chaleureux a été très, très important pour nous. Une ville internationale comme Genève fait la différence. Nous travaillons aussi avec nos partenaires à Genève, la Fédération des entreprises romandes, pour nous impliquer plus dans notre ville. Pour cela, nous remercions de vos gestes, d'être parmi nous, de votre présence et surtout de votre engagement. Madame la Présidente, je vous donne la parole.
Madame la Directrice Générale de l'Office des Nations Unies à Genève, Monsieur le Président de l'Organisation internationale des employeurs, Mesdames et Messieurs en vos titres et fonctions, Mesdames et Messieurs. Tout d'abord, permettez-moi au nom du Conseil d'État de vous remercier chaleureusement. En effet, c'est un honneur de pouvoir répondre à votre invitation et d'être parmi vous aujourd'hui. Mais c'est un honneur parce qu'il ne s'agit pas d'un événement quelconque. C'est l'ouverture de votre sommet mondial. Mais c'est un honneur aussi car c'est la première fois que vous confiez les autorités à participer à un événement de votre organisation. Le monde traverse une année mouvementée. 2020 restera celle du coronavirus et d'une crise sanitaire aiguë, devenue crise économique, sociale, culturelle. Nous le savons, les entrepreneurs, les employeurs, vos membres en somme, sont particulièrement touchés par cette situation. Dans les pays où des confinements sont imposés, alors même que des pans entiers de l'économie sont fermés, ils se battent pour faire survivre leurs entreprises, pour maintenir les emplois et les salaires. Dans certains pays où des mesures moins strictes sont en vigueur, ils mesurent malgré tout les inquiétudes et la fragilité de l'économie. Dans ce contexte, le message que je souhaite vous apporter aujourd'hui est un message de soutien. Je souhaite avoir une pensée pour toutes celles et tous ceux qui sont des victimes très directes, très concrètes de cette crise. Bien sûr, il y a les personnes malades, contraintes à l'isolement, hospitalisées, celles dont un proche est aux soins intensifs ou dont un parent est décédé. Mais il y a aussi les personnes qui sont plongées dans l'incertitude. L'incertitude de savoir si leur entreprise existera toujours demain. L'incertitude de savoir si elles pourront toujours proposer un travail à tous leurs collaborateurs. Pour faire face à la deuxième vague de Covid, le Conseil d'État genevois a dû prendre les mesures les plus strictes de Suisse. Nous les avons graduellement intensifiées en fonction de l'aggravation de la situation. Et aujourd'hui encore, les bars, les restaurants et de multiples commerces sont fermés. Nous sommes bien évidemment conscients de la dureté de ces mesures pour l'économie. C'est pourquoi nous les prenons avec le plus grand sérieux et sans jamais oublier celles et ceux qui souffrent de cette situation. Jusqu'ici, le gouvernement genevois a mis à disposition des moyens importants pour différents secteurs touchés. Et en outre, il ne cesse de se battre pour dégager des aides plus substantielles. Pendant cette crise, et cela a été répété à de multiples reprises, Les décisions politiques sont le fruit d'une délicate pesée d'intérêts entre la santé publique et l'économie. Mais la santé publique et l'économie ne s'opposent pas. Elles vont de pair. Il n'y a qu'ensemble que nous pourrons surmonter une crise de ce type. Je veux parler d'une coopération entre le public et le privé. Et pour vous en donner un exemple, à Genève, elle se manifeste notamment par l'engagement des cliniques privées aux côtés de l'hôpital public dans la lutte contre l'épidémie. Je veux aussi parler de la coopération internationale, car les enjeux du XXIe siècle ne connaissent aucune frontière. Nous vivons dans un monde globalisé, interdépendant. Tout ce qui se passe au sud a un impact au nord, tout ce qui se passe à l'est a un impact à l'ouest. Une bulle financière qui explose au cœur d'un pays met en danger la prospérité planétaire. Quand un nouveau virus émerge, il devient une menace pour l'humanité tout entière. Le changement climatique continuera de pousser des vagues humaines vers la pauvreté, vers la misère, vers d'autres horizons. Pour faire face à tous ces défis, le seul chemin possible est celui de la coopération. Pour la favoriser, rien de tel que les échanges, les réseaux au-delà des frontières, tels que le vôtre. Vous avez été créé en 1920. Vous représentez plus de 50 millions d'entreprises. Vous facilitez l'accès à l'emploi pour des centaines de millions de travailleurs. Votre vision consiste à créer un environnement économique durable dans le monde qui permette de promouvoir la libre entreprise et qui soit équitable et avantageux, tant pour les entreprises que pour la société. Ces intérêts, vous les portez de votre siège de Genève, au sein d'un large éventail d'agences des Nations Unies, d'organisations internationales et aussi dans les médias. Votre organisation s'engage notamment pour les droits humains, pour la conduite responsable des entreprises, pour le développement durable. Croissance économique et environnement sain ne sont pas deux notions conflictuelles. Au contraire, elles peuvent parfaitement cohabiter. Je salue donc votre engagement, vous remercie pour votre attention et vous souhaite un très bel anniversaire.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Emery Toracinta. Je pense qu'on partage tous ce message de compatibilité entre la santé et l'économie et la croissance économique, précisément dans ces moments d'incertitude. Et on sera très engagé dans l'avenir pour faire ça possible. May I just now go to other two important speakers who wants to convey a message, some message for the IOE family. One of them is Monsieur Jean-Marie Akak, qui est le président de la Confédération générale des entreprises de Côte d'Ivoire, une confédération qui a aussi été très engagée à l'OIE, surtout récemment. And on the other side, we have with us Mrs. Sangeeta Reddy. She is the president of FISHI, one of the most important business organizations in India, and also a highly committed organization with IOE in different times, and also especially recently during the COVID period. So let's go ahead with the messages.
Monsieur le Président de l'OIE, Mesdames et Messieurs les membres du comité de direction de l'OIE, chers collègues, Mesdames et Messieurs, avant tout propos, permettez-moi de vous traduire toute la gratitude de la Confédération générale des entreprises de Côte d'Ivoire, CGEC, et au-delà de tout le secteur privé ivoirien, pour l'opportunité qui nous est donnée de nous adresser à la communauté mondiale des affaires. Le centenaire de l'OIE constitue une occasion propice pour rendre un hommage appuyé aux hommes et aux femmes qui ont porté sur les fonds baptismaux notre organisation commune, aujourd'hui la voix du secteur privé au niveau mondial. La CGEC est la Fédération des organisations patronales de l'Afrique de l'Ouest, FEPAO que je préside, partage la vision de l'OIE et travaille au quotidien à relever tant au niveau national que sous-régional les défis liés au développement des entreprises, à la promotion de l'entrepreneuriat, notamment celui des jeunes, et à la question cruciale du capital humain. Notre rôle en tant qu'organisation de défense des intérêts du secteur privé est d'œuvrer à la mise en place de politiques et de réformes devant assurer la compétitivité des entreprises et faciliter leur meilleur accès aux marchés internationaux. Pour réussir de tels objectifs, nous avons noué des partenariats solides avec le gouvernement ivoirien, les instances communautaires que sont l'Union économique et monétaire ouest-africaine et la communauté économique des États de l'Afrique de l'Ouest, ainsi qu'avec des organisations patronales sœurs, des réseaux d'hommes d'affaires et des chambres consulaires, aussi bien en Afrique qu'en Europe. Ces partenariats nous ont permis de participer à l'élaboration et à la mise en œuvre de plusieurs politiques économiques et sociales, notamment celles portant sur les accords de partenariat économique, l'union douanière régionale et la zone de libre-échange continentale au niveau de l'Union africaine. En outre, nous réunissons chaque année les chefs d'entreprise ivoiriens et du continent au cours de notre forum économique annuel CGEC Académie pour recueillir leurs préoccupations et débattre des thématiques qui intéressent la communauté des affaires. Monsieur le Président, chers collègues de la communauté mondiale des affaires, je voudrais terminer en remerciant l'OIE pour l'appui qu'elle nous apporte et lui souhaiter bon vent pour le prochain centenaire. Je vous remercie.
Hello and namaste. At the outset, I would like to congratulate IOE on their centenary celebrations. Global organizations like IOE provide tremendous value to its members and to the tripartite structure of the international labor organizations. The current pandemic has further enlarged the scope and the value of such organizations. We all know that viruses don't stop at borders. I do not think we need a more compelling example of why global organizations and international cooperation matters. Technology also crosses borders at the speed of light. We are a global community that requires shared solutions and these solutions to handle the challenges which we are collectively facing. And that is why we at FICCI are part of IOE. India has been one of the early members of IOE, and I think over the years this relationship has grown and evolved. I believe it's very important for us to maintain and grow the relationship, as well as appreciate the fact that this concept of a global world is truly becoming more and more a reality. IOE represents business interests in social and labor matters at the global level. With support of ILO, it sets international workplace standards where employers are represented alongside trade unions and governments in a unique tripartite structure, because it is important to create a framework where all of them are well represented and think win-win for the future of the world. Future members can avail exposure to this international platform, share their perspectives in many interactive programs organized by IOE. Such an interface provides deep insights to members of prevailing conditions in different countries, and also significantly prevailing strategies that people are following to survive in an ever-changing world in these VUCA times. I believe it was Darwin who said that it's not the strongest or the largest who survives, but the most adaptable. IOE will help us stay adaptable, stay evolving, and appreciate what's happening on the global agenda. IOE has been helping FICCI in advancing the employers and the business agenda across a range of international fora and media. New members can take advantage of the information provided by IOE through their numerous guidelines and position papers for handling the challenges caused by this pandemic. A sustainable future that benefits all cannot be achieved without multilateral relationships, and therefore I believe it's of significant value to belong to a global organization like IOE.
Thank you for these two messages. I think that the last point that Madame Sangeeta already said is not the strongest, is the most adaptable organization, the one which will be overcoming also the situation that we have. And also for that we need good wines, as the President Akak also said to us. Let me now go to someone who has been studying our history in depth. We are delighted to have with us one researcher, Madame Mariette Louise, who has been deepening our history, who has made also a good interaction, has undertaken a good interaction also with us to know us better, and from an external perspective, has some findings, some highlights that we would like to share with you. Mariek, thank you so much for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope you are hearing me well. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would very much like to thank the IOE for giving me this opportunity to share with you part of my work on transnational business actors and business diplomacy after having done some research first on the International Labour Organization. And of course, I would like to use this opportunity to thank again the IOE members I've been interviewing since I started this research a couple of years ago with other researchers. In this presentation, I would like to briefly insist on the challenges of researching business actors and then highlight some of the resilient trends of IOE action over the century as what I call a diplomatic actor in its own way. Starting with the challenges of researching business actors, those challenges are twofold. First, the lack of research, especially on international business organizations, which require that us, as researchers, have access to the archives, and this has been possible thanks also to the ILO and to the business community. Hence, thank you again for agreeing on interviews, which is very important. Second, the other challenge is the dominant views of a business. Employers, as you may know, are often seen as the usual suspects. They are essentially considered as those who hold the power, both in the economic sphere, but also increasingly in the political sphere, especially since the shift in global authority seems more and more located in the economy at large, although what is meant by economy is not necessarily always well defined and tends to overlook the variety of economic and financial activities. But therefore, as a consequence, the majority of research on business actors has been mainly dealing with lobbying practices and the way interest economic groups like national business organizations and companies are promoting, mostly successfully, their interests. And in a sense, the results are not very surprising, as they demonstrate in most cases the influence of business over regulatory standards. However, some research has also shown that business might be challenged and forced to compromise in some negotiations, environmental, for instance. And from an ILO perspective, and from the research I've been doing, I would argue that in the field of social regulation, if you take ILO conventions where the IOE intervenes, the influence of employers is not that systematic, precisely because of the overarching tripartite structure of negotiations, which imply that employers, and maybe more than in other arenas, have to adjust their positions and compromise. And such observations then mean that we need a more fine-grained framework to analyze the transformations and role of business today, especially at the global level, and that lobbying should not be our sole entry. Such an analytical framework should first take into account the diversity of business, which, by the way, has been a key aspect in the IOE discourse over the century. Second, it should take the political role of business seriously by recognizing that representing business, as the IOE does at the global level, for instance, and this is not the only one, is first and foremost a political activity. In the case of the IOE, as you all very well know, the political and diplomatic context is the context of the ILO, which of course generates resources, starting with the recognition of the IOE as also the global voice of business, but also a lot of constraints for an organization like the IOE. Indeed, despite its tripartite specificity and the practice of social dialogue, which is familiar to many business organizations, the ILO remains an intergovernmental organization, sustained by diplomatic rules, both written and non-written, requiring not only universal representativeness and group discipline, but also specific skills at the individual level, such as legal expertise, for instance, in the field of international labor standards and more human rights that need to be supported by national business organizations. And within the IOE and the ILO employers group, the focus really has clearly been in trying to develop and sustain this kind of legal expertise, more than public mobilization, for instance, or the development of economic expertise, which tends to be delegated to other actors such as international organizations or firms. But what is striking from a historical perspective is that for a long time, and this is slowly changing and only slowly, national business organizations were not necessarily that interested in international matters. And very often, when you look at the IOE archives, you see that the role of the IOE was to convince national business organizations, to invest both from an economic and human resources perspective in these international matters and stop considering them as secondary. Where the IOE seems to have been rather successful in legitimizing its role over the year is in assessing its specific value added in the field of international social matters by distinguishing them from other international aspects, economic, sanitary, environmental, with the recurrent concern that although enlarging the mandate was important to tackle the interdependency of issues, there might be a risk of dilution of the mandate. In other words, and this is another historical observation, there has always been a strong concern on what is the authentic mandate of the IOE, what should be the priority, and where can the IOE make the difference. And the main answer has to stay focused on the ILO and to play the ILO card in a way, although this might be changing within the recent years with the more visible engagement of the IOE with the UN and the G20, but with all the risks identified by some members in terms of institutional fragmentations. And then I come to another historical observation, which I call the ILO first logic within the IOE action. Because of this historically almost genetic link between the two organizations, the IOE has developed some kind of a loyalty duty vis-à-vis the ILO, and the balance between defending employers' interests and preserving the tripartite spirit of negotiations might be sometimes hard to locate. And the IOE can be sometimes in the position of having to justify that what can be considered maybe a retreat from a strict business point of view can be considered a success from a more general point of view, and vice versa. And this is particularly visible, for instance, in the way the IOE promotes the ILO Declaration on M&E and social policy. In addition, because of that link, the IOE can be both embarked in international successes of the ILO, but also sometimes suffer from the relative marginalization of the ILO in the field of global economic governance. And this can sometimes result in less visibility for the organization, which can also be an asset for the purpose of the negotiation. So there is never one-sided view on that. And again, this is why the recent developments of the Business 20 is quite interesting, although the consequences of such commitment in terms of impact are difficult sometimes to assess. Finally, and to conclude, I would like to comment briefly one of the quotes from a former IOE president, Jean-Jacques Exlin, which was highlighted in the IOE brochure edited for the purpose of the anniversary, saying that the IOE is first and foremost a human community. Although you can have many interpretations of that sentence, what strikes me is that when you look at the functioning of the IOE over the years, although the members are the national organization and are very important, there is also relative longevity in the individuals representing those business organizations, therefore creating also some familiarity among the members. More interesting is that such familiar relationships are often instrumental in times of political crisis to overcome them. I will just give one example. When the US left the ILO and the IOE during the 1970s, the correspondence and archives show that individual relationships and individuals as such played a key role in the process of getting the US back. So the community spirit is not just rhetorical, it has political consequences, and it is part of this diplomatic work performed by the IOE, which is very interesting to study. I thank you very much for your attention, and again, for contributing to this research and for the interest that researchers have in the business community.
Hello, everybody. I am delighted to see you all connected. I am here in Geneva to trigger a conversation on the past, the present and the future of our organization, the IOE. And what a privilege, in the middle of very busy schedules, to have important voices participating in these conversations. I'm going to introduce our three speakers very shortly. I would like to start with Brent Wilton. Brent, as many of you know, worked for the IOE for 16 years in different capacities as Senior Advisor, Deputy Secretary General, and became our Secretary General in 2012. Brent, you know that you were instrumental for the development, for the strengthening of the IOE as a global voice of business, and for the modernization of our organization. What a pleasure to have you here with us, despite the very late hours in New Zealand. On my left, we have Roberto Suarez Santos. Roberto is our current Secretary General since 2019. Thank you also, Roberto, for joining this important conversation. And last, but certainly not least, from South Africa, we have Sino Mwabalobelo. Sino is the manager of Business Unity South Africa, BUSA. Welcome, Sino. It's very nice to have you here with us. So let me start with Brent. Brent, I have three questions to you, three questions that I'm sending right away to New Zealand. And if you can share with us your thoughts on what were the major global debates when you became IOE Secretary General, how did the IOE responded to those debates, and what transformations did you introduce to ensure that IOE stayed relevant?
Well,
Brent?
thank you very much for that introduction, Maria Paz, and it's great to see you again, Roberto, and everybody else who is on this call. Greetings to our President, Errol Karasipi, and others who are joining this opportunity to celebrate your 100 years. It really is a fantastic milestone. And yes, your questions, Maria Paz, are big questions. And of course, Roberto, you were there for the whole journey anyway, so you're well aware of what the sort of issues were when I came into the role. I mean, it was clear to say that people were still dealing with the economic crisis from 2008. That has a lot of residue going forward. We had a number of members still in crisis with regards to their own ability to sustain their organizations due to the economic impact caused by the crisis. We had a situation where new topics were emerging in the space, human rights. In 2011, we had, of course, the creation of the UN Guiding Principles, the inclusion in that of the 1998 Declaration on Fundamental Principles and Rights of Work, changed the landscape with regards to how a number of the labor rights were now being seen in a human rights context. We also, of course, had the increasing appearance of the sustainability debate. Sustainability is now the term in current use, but it was becoming more prevalent then. People were thinking in a more connected up way around how business and governments need to move forward. The failure of the Millennium Development Goals, I think, is proof of that there were still major problems of coordination that needed to be sorted through. And the emergence of the SDGs has been an answer to that. That really does call more directly on the private sector to engage in the realization of those goals. And that's not without its challenges in many parts of the world. So as an organization at that time, we needed to think about strengthening our ties and relationship with our members. We needed to look at our economic model, how we actually calculated and applied our membership structure, because it was clear that we had an inherent weakness in our membership fees, in that we were so reliant on half a dozen large federations paying to sustain the business. And if they failed for any reason to be able to meet those obligations, then our ability as an organization to function was going to be seriously compromised. And I think it was necessary for us to go back and look about how do we actually share the load amongst members to provide the services that members said they wanted, but couldn't actually continue just to rely on those larger members to pay the bill. And that was a interesting conversation. And of course, the changes that we put in place only go as fast as your members allow. And all of you on this call who are in membership organizations will be very, very familiar with that. So it's no surprise that some of these things took some time to actually bring to fruition because of the fact that we had to move at a pace which was inclusive of those who are in membership, because we didn't want to lose anybody through that process. Then within the ILO, we had another situation there. We had the reform of the ILO agenda moving forward. We did the reform of the ILO governing body, and we even achieved the reform of the International Labour Conference. And I think what we saw there was a more strategic approach by the employers group and the members of the IOE in terms of how we wanted to engage with the ILO to be more proactive in an agenda that we wanted to bring to the table, rather than purely being a respondent to ongoing requests by trade unions and even governments to continue to build upon the standards base of the ILO. And Maria, you'll remember very clearly, we had a bit of fun in the applications committee for a couple of years as we took back some of the arguments that had been swept under the carpet by the ILO and ignored, in order to ensure that businesses' needs with regards to issues like the right to strike were actually clarified, and people were also fully understanding of what our position with regards to key issues like freedom of association and what that means for business. So I think in that regard, we were very successful in pulling together a more strategic approach, and I'm very pleased to see that that has continued. And I understand, Maria, that you are now running that integration with the ILO, which is so important to us. And I take on board earlier speakers' comments around the fact that the ILO is and will remain a key place for us to act. But it is also clear that going forward now, we're going to have to look a little bit more broadly at some of those engagements in order to make sure that the organization remains relevant going forward. So for me, as I look in terms of some of the other things we did, we started to look at bringing in corporates as members of the the IOE. I'm getting confused like you, the IOE, in order to have them at the table, but also to sensitize them about the role that representative organizations played. Too often we were seeing instances where multinationals were going into developing countries in particular and demanding governments do this and demanding governments do that without any due consideration to the local business community. And I think that's been a real strength to have them contribute to the work of the organization, which I believe they should do, but also you get them to understand that they are just one actor and they are not the only actor in the economy. And that as an organization, the IOE has always relied very much on its representativity as one of its key legitimate means of engagement with governments, multilateral organizations around the world. And whilst multinational companies are very important economic actors, they're not the only one. And so I think that's been a very useful means of getting those people to have a broader understanding of what's going on. Going forward, I think we're going to see an increase in the sustainability debate. The S in ESG is now getting a lot more prominence. I've just come out of a period with the Coca-Cola company, and it's very clear there that institutional investors were becoming very interested in terms of the social impact businesses were having, both in terms of their employees, but not only, including customers, consumers, communities, etc. So I think that area is going to be an increasing workspace for the IOE, and that's not without its challenges. I recognize the earlier speaker talking about the fact that, you know, spreading yourself too thin can lose your focus. You can lose what people believe you're there to do. But at the same time, we have to be careful that we don't lose out in the voice discussion. And that is why I'm pleased to see that there is continued engagement with the likes of BIAC and other organizations that are actually also representing business to make sure that there is better alignment about what we say. It's always been a big weakness, I think, of the business community. We used to joke and say that we were poor organizations of rich people and unions were rich organizations of poor people. But at the end of the day, if anyone wants to talk to the trade union movement, they only ever talk to Sharon Burrow at the ITUC. But when it comes to business, governments have the ability to pick and choose, and that's not good. We need to make sure that they are not able to escape their responsibilities by picking a voice which suits them rather than the voice that actually has a representative strength behind it. So as we go forward with building up better, I think it's important for the IOE to define what that means, both in terms of the role that business will play, because it's going to be business that builds back, but we also need to be clear what it means in the multilateral organizations. There are some comments going around about the fact that perhaps in the future, UN agencies should look more to the ILO model in terms of the way in which decisions are taken by bringing to the table actors of society. Well, for me, that's very clearly an area where the IOE needs to be able to step up and step forward, given our history and experience in doing that. So it's an exciting time for the IOE, I believe. I'm really thrilled with the team that's in place. Being a corporate member for a while and experiencing the services from a different perspective was very, very heartening. And I really do congratulate you, Roberto, for the team that you have in place, the work that you're doing and the visibility you're bringing to the IOE and its mission. But we also need to be thinking about our values in the new world. How do we actually, in creating the new future that everyone is talking about, what are the values that we are going to stand behind going forward? What are the values that we need everybody to accept, that we need to adhere to, even though we need to leave space for the actual realization of that within an individual economy? So again, a value-based organization is going to be important. We've had a 100-year history of being values-based, so I see it as something which is a progression, not a revolution, an evolution of what we've been doing. So I'll shut up there, Maria Paz, because you know I can just go on and on and on.
Thank you, Brent. Fascinating to the fact that you reminded us of some of the successes we've achieved, some lessons learned, and also some advice as we move into the future. And I now turn to Roberto. Roberto, I'm looking at you, and I invite you to look at today, at the present. And I would like you to pick your brain in terms of what are the challenges and what are the opportunities for the IOE today, and how is the IOE adapting, if I use the word just used by Sanjita Reddy, how is the IOE adapting under your leadership to meet those challenges and to seize those opportunities?
How much time I have, Maria?
3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. First, let me say, I was thinking for a while, and I have shared that with you, with the team of IOE, with Matthias, who is on my back, with you, Maria. I mean, the people also that help us move forward. It's not a single leadership, it's the leadership of others behind us, the leadership of the previous Secretary General, the leadership of Errol, the leadership of Tunsil, the leadership of the IOE leaders, let's put it like that. That's what helped us a lot to move forward. And that's very precious added value that we have is that we are cohesive, which is not simple. Let's be very frank. Our strength is our diversity. Our strength, we always say, is the fact, and we had strong discussions, and Linda Cronyon perhaps is listening to that, on what is the balance and powerful network of IOE, and that was decided, the powerful, balanced voice for business, that was decided as the legend of IOE. But let's be frank, being cohesive is not easy. Being united is not easy at all. Once we are, the strength that we have is incredible. And as Brent was saying, the convening power of an organization of IOE representing business. And we always say more than 50 million companies, and Errol was very much pushing for having this number, which is very good, but at the end of the day, what counts is not just this number, is the fact that our business and employees organizations are independent, and we know how expensive is being independent, how difficult is being independent for an employee organization. We are now preserving Fede Cámaras in Venezuela. We have been preserving also other organizations that are under threat by public authorities, but also that they are representative. So the fact of having this network of representative and independent organizations is what make them be listened by governments. And that's what make us being strong. Now, when everybody wants, and Brent will refer to that, the sustainability debate, in the UN family, you have other actors with very legitimate and complementary positioning. But I have to say, in a modest but sincere manner, the strength that we have of having members that are the main interlocutors from the business side at the government level is IOE. So how we use that for the future? We have been changing intensively, and you all know that. I mean, the COVID was an accelerator and it speed up the process, but on one side, we have already decided to be much closer to our members. We realize that we are very much, and I'm going to be clear, ILO is critical for us. It's our main partner, and we have other international organizations. The human rights is very important. But if we just focus on that, if we just rely our strength or the initiatives that come from there, we will be losing the closer approach with our members. So we needed to make an effort to be closer with you. So already during the Brent period, and I pushed this agenda also strongly, we created the working groups with different themes. We started to enter into other areas, migration, skills, human rights. We also strengthened the value of business environment as such, without losing focus on our mandate, but also trying to understand what you need from us better. And I have to say that during this 9-month period, and I will refer to that later, digital tools have helped us enormously, precisely to bring voices that normally perhaps were not being so heard, even though we really need as oxygen face-to-face meetings. I mean, at the end of the day, social contact also may make us strong. Being on the ground also has nothing to do with digital connections, okay? But I have to say that the digital era, to some extent, is helping us to focus more on the needs of members, and that's the way forward. Not losing our essence, which is the independent and the representative business organizations. On the other side, and I finish with that, what we are realizing that we are widening our scope of stakeholders. And Matthias will refer to that later. We have more international organizations within the UN family engaging with IOE. We have more stakeholders. We have been addressed by some NGOs also wanting to work with us. We have been also addressed by the academia world also to engage further. We have limited capacities, but we rely much on also our network. So that's a trend that we are, I was going to say cautiously, but I don't want to use cautiously as it appears perhaps very conservative, but we are undertaking with some diligence, let's put it like that, but we need to do that. And we are engaging further with more stakeholders, which will also give us some strength. We are now much more visible, and we refer to that with to the outreach that IOE has now. That's very good, and I think Maria referred to that. It's very good that we are becoming more visible, but we are more exposed. Yeah. The more visible you are, the more exposed you are to criticism, to the public opinion, so also we have to be careful. So I will stop here. Perhaps I overcome the time I had.
Excellent, Roberto. Thank you very much. Focus, working closer with our members, the power of our members, the power of our network, the strong team we have, despite the fact that it's not a big team. I think absolutely, I agree with you. It makes a difference in terms of how do we work today and how do we face those challenges and seize those opportunities. I would like to look to Sino. Sino, you're joining us from South Africa, as I said. You are the manager of BUSA, and you are the voice of the next generation of employee organization leaders. And I have two questions for you. What do you see as emerging challenges for employee organizations, and what transformations need to happen now within employee organizations to make sure they stay relevant, and they continue to be seen as key players in the future. Sino, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Maria. Good afternoon. And congratulations to the IOE on its centenary. I think one of the challenges, or a few of the challenges, just to name some, would be the retaining of relevance, remaining agile, adaptable, remaining current and inclusive in an ever-changing landscape. I think those are challenges that are facing employer organizations, as well as managing the challenges related to being seen to be reactive to the countervailing powers of the trade unions. I think also meeting or having to meet the evolving expectations of members are just but a few of the challenges faced by employer body organizations. And in terms of the transformations that would need to happen within these organizations, I think contingencies would have to be put in place to ensure that employers' organizations retain their relevance and ability to respond to their members' needs. Thorough data analysis, research, technical work on the ground, as Roberto had mentioned, all need to be undertaken and embarked upon to ensure that employers' organizations stay ahead of the curve all the time. And then finally, for me, the effective change management element will have to be vital and will have to be considered to be vital in ensuring that this is manageable going forward. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you, Sino. It was very nice to have you here. Agility, being ahead of the curve, being closer in connection with your members, absolutely key as we move into the future.
Okay, now I have to give back the floor to the President. Errol, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Roberto. Dear friends, dear colleagues, as we have seen during the past months, IOE Secretariat has spared no efforts in assisting you, IOE members, while navigating the economic and social crisis generated by the pandemic. Never before, IOE has delivered such a level of outputs and activities to support the continuity and resilience of IOE members. This unique level of engagement has placed IOE at the forefront of international deliberations on the global response to the crisis. We are known as one of the most informed private sector voices in relation to the pandemic, and we are leading the international advocacy efforts of the post-COVID recovery on behalf of the business community. I take this opportunity as IOE President to thank all the members of the Management Board for their support and advice over the past months in ensuring that the continuity and relevance of our organization under this unprecedented time. Since March, the IOE Management Board has been detrimental through regular meetings and consultations to shape IOE's response to the pandemic and prepare the decisions that have been put before you. I also want to thank you, the members, the very heart of this organization, who have shown an unwavering support to IOE. It is due to your commitment that we are expanding our outreach and impact. I also thank you for having entrusted Management Board members with the sound management of IOE under such challenging circumstances. We trust that we have fulfilled your expectations in that regard. Last but not least, I would also like to thank especially Roberto, Matias, Maria Paz, and all IOE staff who have demonstrated their agility and determination to maintain close contact with all IOE members and provide you with the services and support needed. Dear IOE members, dear friends, dear colleagues, despite the disruption of the COVID-19 crisis, we have managed to celebrate this milestone together and to raise our voices in support of an extraordinary institution. I am grateful for your presence today and your commitment to be part of IOE for the centenary ahead.
IOE is very important for us because it provides us with, first of all, with a network of worldwide institutions that face the same challenges, and also provides us support to keep up with a dynamic and powerful agenda to address the challenges of the future of work.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate the IOE on the 100 years. That's fantastic. And wish them another 100 years. And we look forward to continually working with them and their assistance that they provide for us as well.
Congratulations is first to say, and if you consider 100 years, that is so long, and imagining to build that up and having members around the world to keep joining and contributing to that, fascinating that it keeps going on for so long and it's still as needed as we can see every day.
Any organization that's been in existence for 100 years and still manages to find a platform to address various current issues means that the organization has probably stayed relevant of what the changing demands of the environment or the market or the business or whatever we call it. It has stayed relevant.
National Federation of Maldivian Employers is a relatively young federation. We are just 1 year old, and at this stage we have relied very heavily on IOE, and their guidance was paramount for us, and we are moving forward with a lot of their guidance, and they have been really supportive.
Centenary is a special date, and it seems like an organization that lasts so long has done too many good things, otherwise it wouldn't be alive. So it's the first 100 years, and we expect to have another 100 years.
I would like to extend, on behalf of the Employers Consultative Association, my heartfelt congratulations on the achievement of 100 years. 100 years is a very long time, and there is no doubt for the organization to be around for 100 years, someone would have done something right.
L'OIE a gagné la première bataille, c'est-à-dire à fédérer toutes les organisations africaines importantes, mais elle gagnerait à aller au-delà, c'est-à-dire aller vers les entreprises, bien sûr en passant par les fêtières.
It's commendable that IOE has been around for 100 years. I think it's playing a tremendous role. I think that it's a good balance for employers with the ILO, and we certainly wish it Godspeed and all the best for the next 100 years. I hope I'm not here to actually commend them on their second 100th anniversary. But yeah, I think it's great. I think the centenary function here has been very good the first day. And we will look forward to continue to interact with it and add value to the IOE where we can.
Dear colleagues, now we have come to the end, and now it's time also to thank all the team that was behind this technology, who made this centenary on Zoom live. Thank you to the team. Thank you to the interpreters. Jean, thank you. Monique, thank you. All the team behind the scenes, thank you very much. Now we have closed our General Council. Thank you.